And let me share my screen. Okay, great. Okay, great. So today is our June Maker training. We'll talk about MyIntent, who we are as a company, who is a MyIntent Maker. I'll take you to a couple of maker stories, and then we'll go through the word finding technique for you as a maker and you as a person. You know, if you haven't found your word yet, this will be really informative. And then we'll go through a few summertime event ideas. Somebody was bringing theirs on a beach vacation, which is awesome. This is part of the idea sort of dump. Then I'll teach how to stamp 2 words. And then we'll go through some resources that I think will be really, really helpful. And at the end of it, the role play is after 6 o'clock. So if anybody wants to stay on and hasn't found their word and wants me to help you find your word, I would be more than happy to do that. And it would be a really great chance for everybody to see how the word finding technique works in real time. So at MyIntent, we like to say that we're not a jewelry company, that we are actually a service project, because the bracelets and the words that come out of it, the bracelets and the physical parts of what we create as makers, is just a byproduct of the conversation and the connection that we have with this other individual. Because the intention behind everything is to create positive action. We're being a catalyst for meaningful conversations. So this is our mission, and it's all about the conversation. It's all about the connection, and then using that to fuel positive action. And so what is an intention? It is the mental state. It is how we want to, the guidepost of our lives, you know, and it could be just like there are street lamps, you know, in every sort of different segment of our lives, we might have a different intention. And it's okay to have more than one intention at any one given time, but it allows you to know what you want to do with your time, just like a watch tells you what time it is. So my word is soul care. And my intention for this year is to really do things that feed my soul, that help me come out of my shell, you know, and so to be nurturing to that. So that's what I've been doing this year, is like to be really intentional about how I'm approaching situations, not just to put myself out there for no reason. And who is a MyIntent Maker? It's all of us. It's you and me, and it's this journey that we're taking together. It's to be a meaningful conversationalist, an active listener, a guide, and a community builder. And what that means is that to be a meaningful conversationalist is to allow yourself to be curious about another person, to allow yourself to sit with them in whatever emotions that they're having at that moment. To be an active listener is to ask them more questions and allow them to find those answers too. We are a guide to help people find their word. And we're a community builder. So each person that you create a necklace or a token for, that is another person in your community. And you've just joined our community as MyIntent Makers. So like whatever you're going through as a maker, like I am 100% sure there's another maker who feels exactly what you're going through. So it's creating a bond with people. And so I wanted to share a couple of stories from our maker community. And this first story is from a first grade teacher. She gave her students all the word warrior, because that's their school mascot, and they went through so much. I mean, we all went through so much, but it was it was moving and motivating for her to see how they've risen throughout all of the challenges that they faced. And so she created all these words for them, and that's them. And it's first grade, so that's like 6 or 7. So if that gives you an idea of sort of the youngest makers that we have, it's elementary school students doing it with their class. And this maker, so she actually had her maker kit for a few months and then was a little bit afraid to try it. And then she did it, and it turned out even better than she could expect. And it's exciting to want to do it again. And so I wanted to give a picture of like a realistic bracelet. This is like after a few months, you're starting out, and this might be what it looks like, and as practice keeps going, then you find your style, you find your signature, and it looks more confident and more confident and more confident. So this is, I wanted to give, like, once we take that first step, once we create that first bracelet, it's much easier to keep going. It's just that first hurdle. And so this is how to help someone find their word. This is our word finding technique. This is from our blog that our founder, Chris Pan, had written, how he helps people find their word. And this is generally this is the process that we go through, that I've gone through with people at events and one-on-one and things like that. And so before the conversation happens, just like we did with tonight and taking that collective breath, it's allowing yourself to take that breath, to ground yourself and to prepare yourself. So this mindset is really important in that it's prepping you to let go of whatever is happening and to be present with this other person. So we like to say, be present, find your feet, feel the ground underneath your feet. If you're sitting in a chair, feel the chair under your seat. To be open. Oftentimes, whenever we share our vulnerability, it gives permission for others to share theirs. And sometimes, it means sharing your word. It doesn't mean we don't have to go into like a therapy session with another person, but it just another person will feel that they have permission to be with you and to be open with you if you feel like you can be open with them. So it's just like a mutual feeling that you'll have in a conversation. And then the last thing is to be confident. We're asking really big questions, and so it's just to go for it, to ask people, what's your word? And to share your intention as well. And so as we connect with this other person, I like to start with, what's your word? And then you can follow up with a brief explanation of your intention. You want to create a bracelet for somebody because this is something that has helped me in my daily life. And so I just wanted to share that with you. And so that is one way that you can open up the conversation. And then allow for the pause to happen after you ask the question, what's your word? After you explain your intention, allow them to reflect on the question that you just asked. And then after the pause, if a word hasn't bubbled up, or if they don't have another question after that, here there are 3 questions that sort of are great follow-up questions. Basic sort of things that I always ask people. And the first question is, what's a quality or virtue you want more of in your life? And sometimes that's a little bit vague. So sometimes I like to ask, who's somebody that you admire? And why do you admire them? So then the person is thinking about the qualities and the traits of people that they admire and what they would want to embody in their life. And so that's sort of allowing that person to see, just to call out something that they want to see within themselves. And the second question is, what's a challenge you want to overcome? So whatever the challenge is, whatever obstacle that is in our lives, sometimes it's so easy to name the obstacle. And that's sort of the first phase of this question. It's to name the obstacle, name the challenge that's happening. And then the question after that is, what's on the other side of the challenge? What would life look like on the other side of this challenge? And so it's about truly looking past the challenge, but we have to name it first. We have to know what someone is going through in order to help them see what's past it. And the third question is, what is something that makes you feel alive and want to focus on? And so this is sort of that idea of like, we named this challenge and then we're asking what's past it. And now we're asking, what is something that brings you joy? What is something that you can do every day? Or what is that moment that you can create over and over again? And so it could be something like, makes me feel alive is being in my garden, and then it's like, what about your garden, And so asking these questions of like, these are just the start of the questions. And then depending on what they answer, it will help inform how you take the conversation after that. One thing after the pause, after you ask these questions, is embrace the awkward silence, because there's 90% of the time there is an awkward silence, and it's because I am so excited to find the word with you that I always want to rush it. And so I always have to remind myself to take a step back and allow that person to take up all of the space that they need. And then support and acknowledge. So especially with the what's a challenge that you want to overcome, we really want to allow ourselves to be curious, not to answer any questions. We want to acknowledge what they're going through. And then also ask, can you share more? What about this is, what's the most challenging part of it? Just keep the conversation going, because the last thing that we would want to do is fix anything, because there's nothing broken, there's nothing to be fixed. It's just something to talk about, to look at, and so then another way to create this conversation openers, especially if you're doing it with a group, with your family, with your team at work or anything like that. We have these question cards that have 4 sort of different topics, sort of buckets, if you will. And then you can ask, who are your heroes? So that kind of goes back into that first question, what is a quality or virtue you want more of in your life? So who are your heroes? What about them do you love about them? Like, what is it, something that they've accomplished, or is it the way that they carry themselves? Things like that. So these are just, they allow you to, or it allows the person to see these questions and then answer them, especially in a group setting, because it's hard to have a one-on-one conversation in a group setting for obvious reasons, but it just gets people to think independently first before we put the spotlight on them, with sort of no pressure. Does anybody have any questions so far? And we'll talk about going deeper and what that looks like. So going deeper, basically, sometimes the first word that a person chooses is a wonderful word. And sometimes you can just feel maybe there's just something a little bit deeper than that. Maybe there's something like that's just the very surface of it. And then we want to get a little bit deeper to see what the root of it is. And so, for example, this is probably the most popular, or not popular, but like this is what I get the most at events whenever we did events. it's usually parents who get their child's name. And sometimes it's perfect. Sometimes it's the perfect word for them. But sometimes I like to ask a follow-up questions just to see maybe if there's something else there. And so these examples are from the blog that Chris had written. And so he asked her what quality she wanted to have to be a great parent. She thought for a minute and replied, courage. So that was what was underneath her child's name. And for me, what I like to ask parents whenever I get a name is, how do your children motivate you to be the best version of yourself? What are the qualities that you see in your kids that just expands your heart and just like this is why this is why it's their name, you know? And for I think this was a dad. I had asked him, what qualities would you like to teach your children? So a lot of times with kids, you know, when we embody our intentions, they see it, they feel it, and they pick it up. And so it's a reminder of like, oh, I'm embodying patience. You know, I want to be patient with my kids. And that allows them to pick up on it. So that's just one way to go a little bit deeper when it's usually a name. And sometimes it's the name of kids, sometimes it's the name of partners or parents or whatever it is, but it's that idea of there's something a little bit more. Another example is when people choose words like success or happy, you know, and sometimes that's exactly the word that they need. But sometimes words like that, it's a little, every person has a different definition of it. And so what I like to ask is, what does success look like? So if you close your eyes and you're in your most successful place, what is that feeling? And so for this person, it was a sense of community in the coffee shop that he was running. So what is and sometimes it's not even about the definition, but even about the motivation behind the word. It's like, if they feel like they aren't successful right now, what is something, how can they work to be successful? So what is it that, for me, I didn't have success, but I had discipline as one of my words, because I just needed to allow myself to remember the bigger picture. And so sometimes it's about that, you know, remembering the bigger picture and that motivational word that will help get you there. And then the biggest piece of advice that I can give is trust your intuition, right? These are all just sort of guidelines, and these are all sort of just like tips that can really help you in a conversation, but it's your intuition, it's your conversation with this other person. And sometimes it's about having someone find their word first, and then so that we can talk about it later. And the other big point is to have fun. So the energy that we bring into the conversation is just as important as actually helping them find their words. So I remember when I first started out, I was like very excited, and my excitement was very serious. And so whenever I'm having these conversations with people were like, oh my God, like I have to find my word for life. This is it. This is my word forever. And I was like, I felt bad because I was just very excited. But that sort of like serious energy that I was bringing, it made them feel like there was so much pressure to find their word. And so I learned that to express my excitement in a different way, you know. So does anybody have any questions? Nope. Okay, so I'll keep going. So summertime maker kit ideas. So somebody was bringing their maker kit to the beach. That's a great place to bring it. I wanted to also highlight like family reunions. I saw my family for the first time last week, after like over a year and a half. And so it was really, really beautiful to be able to reconnect with them. And so it's sort of like a morale booster to be able to see your family and then to partake in this activity just to deeply reconnect again. Going back to the office, you know, I'm still working remotely. And so I can't wait to be able to see my coworkers again and to be in the office with them again. Ladies' night. So we have people who plan things for their friends, you know, like a friend weekend, a friend reunion, things like that. School just ended. And so, like that first grade teacher story that I had shared before, um, she sent off her students with all of those bracelets. And so this is a great way, especially if you have a high school senior that's going into college, you know, it's a big change, it's a big transition for them. This could be a great idea. And then volunteer events. We've had a lot of people use this as a fundraising tool, especially during the summer, especially as people are able to start gathering again. If anybody has any questions on how to do it in a group, I'm here. I can answer it, but no pressure. You can always reach out to me afterwards. But does anybody have any questions?
Hi, Annie. Yes, Shondella here. I'm planning to do a group session to help my coworkers find their word. It'll be virtually though. Do you have any suggestions on how the best way to do that?
Absolutely. So is it okay? So there are two ways that you can do it right off the top of my head, but are you going to be sending them their bracelets or is it just a word finding session?
I don't know. It right now. I think it's just going to be a word finding thing, but it may be where I send them bracelets. I have to talk to my director to see how he wants to do it. But right now, I'm thinking it's just going to be a word finding.
Usually I like to suggest that you send them sort of like, who is my intent? You know, like just a little bit of background and let them know that this is the intention for the call is like to find your word, whether it's for work or for life, for a time period, you know, just to get them their gears rolling because sometimes in a virtual setting it's a little bit intimidating to be asked a question and you're on camera and so I usually like to prep them in that way. And then whenever you come onto the virtual call, I always suggest doing that grounding, just breathe together, just a couple of breaths. And then you can always share your intention, you know, first. Why do you want to host this? And then you can always kick it off with your word and your why. And then that usually allows people to open up about like their word, what they've been thinking about, and then you can like that opens up the conversation and people can ask each other things, especially in the chat box. Or as after you take a breath, after you do these things, you can use the Maker Kit question cards and just sort of have it as a breakout sessions if it's a large group, you know, have each group answer the question and have them talk to each other and allow that conversation to happen so that whenever you come back to the larger group, you'll be able to, people are more willing to share once they've already shared, you know, and a lot of times I like to ask, what was something that you learned about yourself through this group? And then that way the reflection continues. And then in the last sort of not few minutes, probably 15-20 minutes, depending on how many people there are, you can have them share their word, whatever word they found, you know, and then if they haven't found a word yet, maybe they can go a little bit later and they'll find inspiration from their team members. Yeah.
So you said to prep them. So I could probably just find some language on the website. You're saying send that information to them ahead of time, because
Yeah.
okay, I was gonna say I'll have a few minutes, like I'll have time on the agenda, I guess, to be able to explain stuff. So are you saying you to send it even ahead of that, or would that be okay to do?
I think like you know your team best. So if you think that there are a few more shy people on your team, then maybe just sending that email a little bit ahead of time would be good. But if you don't think that your team needs it, then you can definitely just use those minutes at the top of the meeting to share. And we do have a team building page where we share some resources on how people have done it with their teams. So I can definitely, we're going to send all of the links, everything that we talked about in a follow-up email after this session so that you have everything. But yeah, that could be something that, since you know your team the best. Yeah. Oh, you're on mute, Chandela.
One more question. So on the, the word finder that's on the website,
Yes.
do you recommend I mean, I get that, someone can go on there and come across that and find it, but do you recommend like doing a session, but then having the people, because we will be virtually, like maybe have them individually go to the website to find their word, to use the word finder?
I think that's definitely an option. I think that if the purpose of the virtual session is to help people find their word, then I feel like sometimes people with using the word finder will find their words, and then at the session it can create even deeper conversation if that's what you want. But sometimes it's fun to have them organically talk to each other and find their word. Again, I think it depends on if you have more shy team members versus people who are very comfortable with each other. I think it's just the comfort level of your team. But I I feel like I always suggest the word finder quiz just because it's something fun and it's something to get the gears going. But if you want people to find their word at the event, I would say hold off on that and send it after, just for fun, you know. Yeah.
Okay. And I'm sorry to monopolize the time, but I guess I'm trying to figure out how would we use the cards if we're going to do breakout sessions and everyone's going to separate to go on breakouts. How would you use the cards?
So if it's on Zoom, you can break people out into sessions and then you can message each grouping. So then you can message each breakout room a different question once everybody's in there. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that maybe like you can get a few people to test out beforehand. We used to do inner warrior weekends, and we had hundreds of people, and so we had to test out with our team first how the breakout sessions work and how the messaging works, just to make sure everything's okay. But I know that there is a capability of Zoom to message each individual breakout room. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you can do one blast announcement too.
Yeah, exactly. So, and because of how breakout rooms work in Zoom, I think you can assign people. So if you assign people, you can always ahead of time give the question beforehand, and then they can sort of help lead that group. Yeah. With the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for all the questions. I hope Everybody got that. Those were really great questions. Gail asked, I'd like to make bracelets for a group and take them to the events. Should I choose a word that fits the group, or should I ask them questions individually prior to the event? So I think, Gail, that's a really good distinction, delineation between what to do. I think it depends on the group that you want, like what they want for the event. So if they want you and your maker superpower of like finding people's words, then you can always ask them beforehand. You can always send them the word finder quiz as well. And usually I would ask if they wanted individual bracelets, individual custom bracelets, or if they wanted a group bracelet. And if it's a group bracelet, then the group can decide what word it would be. But if you take them to the event and you have space and time to create it there, then I feel like it's always nice for someone to find their word. I hope that helps. Does anybody have any more questions? Yes. Okay. So L. Gannon, is it hard to do it with a group if you want people to make their own bracelets? No, we have a sort of like stamping placemat that you can put your letter stamps all on so that they can do it themselves. You can also have your practice tokens, like we have the 5 practice tokens in each maker kit. You can put it you can have 1 practice token and then have them like stamp 1 letter just to see how they feel about stamping, and then they can create their own. But usually whenever people create their own bracelets, it's very exciting, and you just need that placemat on. It has instructions on it, and it allows them to just like have at it. It's usually like once people see what's happening, they're like, wow, amazing. So yeah, I think your focus on helping someone find their word would be great. Do we need approval to sell them? If you're going to exchange any money, we just ask that you are a certified maker, and that is, it's free. You get a little certificate saying that you're a certified maker, and it's just so that we know that your stamping is up to a certain level. So it takes a little bit of practice, and then you send in your picture and then become a certified maker. It's just for our sort of quality assurance. And if you sell them, you're your own business. Like we don't have any sort of business liaison thing. You are your own entity. You can buy your products at wherever you want, like any refills that you want to get from us, things like that. We just want you to we just want to make sure that your stamping is up to a certain level. Yeah. And that, if an exchange of money, so that is also for fundraising. Even if you're not getting the money, if someone is paying for the bracelet in any way, we just want them to have assurance. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. How do you determine what question cards to ask the group? Usually I just pull at random. Just usually it's always a good one, and if not, then you can always see, like we have at the I have not been seeing you. Okay, stop sharing my screen for a moment. At the top corner of the cards, we have like the different subjects. So we have love, dream, be, me, serve, grow. And so you can always choose one from each different topic, or stay on one topic and then have that be for the group. Deb asked, how many letters fit on a token? So we like to say 14 characters, including spaces. So it can be a short phrase or a long word. That's usually how it goes, but it depends on your style and your signature. And how much do people generally sell these for? So we have a whole pricing sheet and things like that we can send afterwards, but it really depends on your local area. if we don't allow like selling online because it's just a really big space. And so when you're selling locally, you can always use your social media as marketing though. So just a heads up, like you can say like, oh, on your social media page, I'm selling these bracelets, like contact me if you want one, you know, things like that. But we sell our bracelets for $20. We usually say that's the rule of thumb, depending on what you're using it for. So if you're selling it for yourself, usually just feel out the market, see how much people are willing to pay for it. And then if it's for fundraising, usually it's a little bit less because people find it like we usually do it where if you donate a certain amount, then you get a bracelet, you know, so then it allows people to feel like they can donate more and then also get something back. Yeah. If I started with the 3 initial questions you asked, how and why would we transition to the cards? You don't have to. Absolutely, you don't have to. It's just another way. If you wanted a different way to start the conversation, you can start it with the question cards. And okay, any more questions? Okay, good to go? Thumbs up. Awesome. These are great questions. I love it. Good job, everyone.
Question.
Yes.
I have a question. So there's 3 ways to find the words, basically: conversation, cards, and the quiz online. Those are average. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I'll send out the placemats that in the follow-up email. It's just a printout. It's just a PDF that you can print out. Okay, cool. And I'm gonna share my screen again. And let's get to stamping. Yes. Before we begin anything with stamping, I want to talk about perfectionism. It is something that plagues us as makers. And I say this with so much affection. It's because, you know, the conversation that we have is so beautiful and precious that we want to make sure that the person is getting the perfect bracelet. And so I want to shift our perfectionism away from the physical stamping and the physical bracelet of it and into the conversation that we have. And so as you can see on the screen, the token says deathbed, and the E on bed is backwards. But otherwise, it's an awesome token, right? The story behind this is that Chris was at brunch one day, and he likes to bring around his maker kit. A lot of our makers just like have it in their car so that they can, if they meet somebody, they can create a bracelet if, you know, they get that feeling. And so Chris had his maker kit on him, and he was at brunch, and then he spotted Conan O'Brien. And he was like, wow. And so then he asked Conan O'Brien, what's his word? Conan says, deathbed, because at the end of my life, when I'm on my deathbed, I want to have lived a life with no regrets. And so Chris goes back, stamps this phrase, and he messes up the E. It's backwards, but then he finishes the token, goes back to Conan and is like, this is your bracelet. I messed up the E a little bit. Is that okay? I can always make you a new one. And Conan says, this is actually even better than what I expected, because that's life. Life isn't perfect. And so when I'm on my deathbed looking at my imperfect life, I still want it to be worth living. So with that said, I usually say that how we stamp the token is actually a reflection of how we had the conversation. And I have like 99% of the time, if something is off just a little bit, I see it, but they don't see it. They say, wow, this is a beautiful token. This is amazing. And I'm like, oh, okay, great, awesome. But because we're so fixated on exactly what it's supposed to look like because we've envisioned it in our minds, that it's like we nitpick. And I would like to say that stamping is like handwriting. Everybody has a different way of writing, and our signature, our style, that is unique to us. And so just like that, our stamping is going to be unique to us. And people 99% of the time will be grateful for us being authentic in the conversation. So I am going to tell you about the setup. We're going to talk about spacing, depth, and then I'm going to show you how to do 2 words. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can see me. And so in your maker kit, you get letter stamps, a hammer, a stamping base, and question cards. In the deluxe kit, you'll get number stamps as well. So I have a twist gold-plated bracelet that I'm going to be using today. And so to start out, before I do anything else, this is a 4x4 by like 3 feet, maybe 2.5 feet. This is what helps me with stamping depth and things like that. And you can get it at any place that sells lumber. You can just ask them to cut the piece of wood. We also have instructions that we'll link in that follow-up email. And if this isn't available to you, we also recommend like a 15-pound anvil that you can order online as well. And you can just put it on top of a table for wherever you're doing it. And it creates the same effect. So it helps with the noise and the stamping depth. So I highly, highly recommend it. And if you can't do that, we have like I'll also link it. It'll show you the stamping depth on different surfaces. Does anybody else have issues with their wrist token twisting or hanging and catching? Joyce, we'll talk about this after stamping. Okay, yeah. Okay. Okay, so we have your token and you put it on through this peg, and then your strings will always be on the top because of how the ledge is. Like one ledge is higher than the other. So that's just for the space for the strings. And so I'm going to move us so you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to stamp the word peace. And so whenever you stamp, so this is the front of the letter stamp, you always want it to be facing you. That way you know that the letter is facing the right direction. And what you'll do is where it says stamp right here in the center, you're just gonna line up your letter stamp to that middle. You're gonna have your letter stamp flush against this middle peg. I use my thumb to push it against the middle peg, and then I use these 3 fingers to sort of a downward force so that it does your token doesn't bounce. So, and before you start, just want to make sure that you're centered, breathe, and then stamp. And so I am not like a one stamp person, if you can see that letter right there. I'm not a one stamp strong person in that way. So what I like to do is 2 to 3 stamps. Sometimes I'll do 5 if it's one of those days, And so what you'll do now is just rotate your token. So you're just gonna, if it's on that center, you're just gonna rotate your token to that red line. And the center of the line will pass through the center of the letter. if that makes sense. And that should give you even spacing. And like I said, it's all about practice and your own style. So sometimes, you know, you want the letter to be a little closer together, so you'll find the spacing of where the line hits through that previous letter. And then again, rotate. Finish the word.
Your screen disappeared.
My screen disappeared. Oh no. Can you see me?
It came back. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank goodness. Okay. Okay, so I have the word peace on here. It might be a little hard to see. Okay. So that's my first word. Whenever you're doing two words, here's what I like to do. I like to draw out a token. And this is just for my own reference. And I'm going to show you like an even word. So find peace. Peace has 5 letters and find has 4 letters. So it'll sort of answer some of the more difficult spacing questions. So what you're going to do is draw a line through the middle of the token. So you can see where the letters sort of line up. And you see that peace, the A is the very center, but there's no 5th letter. So then it goes in between 2 letters on find. So then, since we know that the I will go in between the A and the C, and then the F will go in between the C and the E. And so this is just for your own mental reference, because on the token itself, what you're going to do, so we've been stamping like this, right? So it's like that. What I like to do is take the token, and then I like to, okay, so this is how I'm stamping, right? The string is like this. I like to take the token off and rotate my stamping base 180 degrees, and then put my token back on where it has the string, like the string is still in the same gap area. And then you'll see there's a blue dotted line right here on the stamping base. That is this center line that we created. So you'll see, okay, I'm like, okay, so I have my starting points in between the A. And so I'm gonna rotate. Okay, so that's where the I is between the A and the C. And then there is where the F is between the C and the E. So then, again, with my letter stamp facing me, I'm going to just use my 3 fingers up against that middle peg and use my thumb now as that anchor. And then I have my first letter. Okay, so after that, after you make the first letter, you can just rotate it to that blue dotted line right there on the other side. And it acts the same way as that red line. So you just, once you make that first letter, you just stamp as if you had done it on the other side. So then we have find peace. So what this will allow for, whenever after you do the first letter and then you're rotating the token to the blue dotted line, it allows you to have similar spacing with the top. So you're not just basing it on the bottom if you end up having like spacing that's a little bit too wide and you don't want it to be that wide on the top. So it just allows you to kind of recenter. Does anybody have any questions with stamping? No questions? Okay, great. If you do have questions, feel free to ask. Reach out to me through email. I will be sharing, all of the things that we talked about today in that follow-up email. It is 6 o'clock. If you need to go, feel free. But if you are open to staying, I have a couple of resources that will really help if you have any questions or like, training questions or anything like that. So if you can stay just a couple more minutes, I'm going to share my screen and take you through a couple of things. So here we have, this is what the placemat looks like, where if you're doing it in a group, it shows you how to do it. And then you can just line up your letter stamps. So I think that's really great. The first thing that I want to show is our Facebook group, our maker group on Facebook. This is a group of like 15,000 makers. And if you have any questions, this will be your fastest answer because you can just utilize the search bar right here. And then you can type up whatever keywords that you need for your answer. And pretty sure anybody like in the past 5-6 years has asked it. So you'll find a lot of information because people are so willing to share too. But if you don't, you can always post a question. We will have to approve it, but usually we will either guide you to the answer or we'll post it so that we can answer and other makers can chime in on your question. And then the second thing is our Maker Resource Center. So our Maker Resource Center is everything you need for makers. So we have these training guides. If you click here for more training instructions, you can show how to stamping with depth, how to use your question cards, things like that. So it shows you the different stamping depths, on what, any sort of technical question you can have, you can find it and answer here. And those are the big two things. And if anybody wanted to stay a little bit longer, that's the end of our training session. So thank you so much for joining us. But if you want to role play, if you haven't found your word yet and going through all of that, you haven't found your word and want me to help you find your word, and you can witness sort of in real time how someone finds their word, you can stay, you can join, but then I would definitely need a volunteer of someone who hasn't found their word. And if you have any other questions, if you want to just chit chat, I can also stay on and chit chat with you. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining. If anybody's willing to find their word, can you give me a thumbs up or anything like that? If not, thank you so much for tonight. I'm gonna stop recording.
I really wanted to be able to witness the process